and the support's going to be there. Mark my words, this is not the end.
Tonight, the Supreme Court rules Canada's legislative process has more power than what its own constitution says about the protection of Indigenous rights.
They're working together to try to make things better for the community.
Police joined the Bear Clan patrol after another call for help to clean up used needles on the streets of Winnipeg.
They'll always keep it, they'll always remember it, and they'll always teach it.
And how the Mi'kmaq tradition of birch bark canoe building is passed on to the next generation. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. The Supreme Court of Canada today voted 7-2 against a challenge by Alberta's Mikisew Cree Nation. Mikisew say that First Nations need to be consulted by the federal government before legislation is introduced that could impact not only their way of life, but also constitutionally protected rights. But the government ruled it does not have to consult First Nations, the court ruled does not have to consult First Nations before drafting laws. The court did conclude that the federal government must act honorably and maintain the honor of the Crown when drafting legislation. Mikisew Cree Nation has vowed to continue to fight the decision.
It's very sad. I'm very disappointed that we have to go internationally to fight this battle if we have to. And I'm sure the chiefs will have a mandate from their First Nations, from the women, to take this further. And the support's going to be there. Mark my words, this is not the end of this. It's only the beginning.
Nation to Nation sits down with former Mikisew Cree First Nation Chief Corduroy to discuss today's decision. You can watch that immediately after our newscast. A second person is now facing murder charges in the 2017 death of a 12-year-old Rankin Inlet Nunavut youth. Ray Tapperty Jr. was found dead in July 2017. He was 12 years old. Earlier this week, 21-year-old Glenn Cadlack Jr. was arrested and is facing murder charges. Now, Nunavut RCMP have announced they have charged a second person with murder in Tapperty's death, a young offender. A Manitoba man from Skona First Nation has been missing for over 2 weeks. 21-year-old Dwayne Lavallee was last seen on September 22nd in Evanflow First Nation, approximately 230 kilometers north of Winnipeg. Lavallee's vehicle was found abandoned on a dead-end road near St. Rose de Lac. Since his disappearance, family and friends have rallied together to search for the missing man. Anyone with information is asked to contact St. Rose de Lac RCMP. The Bear Clan Patrol was out in full force in Winnipeg last night. They were in a community that had asked for a little help. And the patrol also had help from some Winnipeg police officers and cadets. Our Daryl Stranger has more.
Despite the cold and snow last night, the Bear Clan Patrol was out at work. They don't normally patrol Winnipeg's North Point Douglas community, but last night, at the request of community members, they did just that.
The community's been after us all summer long. We've been doing a little bit of stuff here. We work on the other side of Main Street, but there's been a lot of requests from community members to come out and support. They're having the same issues with respect to homelessness and IV drug use and things like that, and they're finding the leavings everywhere. So we're answering the call.
Joined by members of the Winnipeg Police Service and cadets, the group patrolled the bushes, fields, and area in North Point Douglas, looking for anything that can be harmful to the community. As they normally do, they found drug paraphernalia, needles, and did some outreach as well. Members of the Winnipeg Police feel it is important to show the community that something is being done, and as Brian Krupolo explains, both organizations will continue to support each other in their efforts.
I think it shows a good relationship between both organizations. They're working together to try to make things better for the community, so why wouldn't we come out? It's a good opportunity.
Both the Winnipeg Police and the Bear Clan hope that these patrols can put the community at ease about their safety and know that there is something that is being done. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A new beginning and a renewed sense of hope are being celebrated on a First Nation that straddles the Manitoba-Ontario border. An event today in Shoal Lake 40 as they mark a major milestone on Freedom Road. The community was turned into a man-made island more than 100 years ago. Shoal Lake 40 was cut off from the mainland in order to provide the city of Winnipeg with its water supply. Community members have relied on a rickety old barge in the summer months, and winter roads can freeze up. Work on an all-season road has now reached the Trans-Canada Highway. We'll have more on this tomorrow. Time for a quick break, but first, here's a look at what's coming up tonight on Nation to Nation.
Todd Lamoran, and here's what's coming up on Nation to Nation. The Supreme Court of Canada was busy with Indigenous matters on its docket today. First up, the Mikisew Cree Nation lost its case. The court ruled the federal government has no duty to consult on legislation affecting First Nations. It also heard arguments today on whether the death of Cindy Gladue should go back to trial. Her alleged killer was acquitted in her horrific death. The Crown appealed and a new trial was ordered. But that was appealed to the Supreme Court. I'll hear from interveners in the case who say Gladue was dehumanized as merely a native prostitute. That's coming up after the national news.
Here's a look at Friday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. 16 with showers for Fredericton and Charlottetown, 18 and rain in Halifax. 0 for Kuchewak, rain snow mix, and +4 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. +8 and rain in Saguenay, a rain snow mix, and a high of 3 for Chibougamau and Val-d'Or. Sunny skies in Toronto and Windsor with highs of 12, 11 under the sun for Sarnia and London. +5 and sunny in Thunder Bay, 8 above in Elliott Lake. In northern Manitoba, sunny and -1 in Churchill, snow and +1 for Puckatawagan. A sunny day in Winnipeg with a high of 7, 9 above under the sun in Brandon and Dauphin. Rain and 7 in Regina, 4 above with showers for North Battleford, 6 and rain in Yorkton. +1 in Buffalo Narrows and Stony Rapids. Welcome back. Over 70% of children in the Alberta foster care system are Indigenous. The Alberta College of Social Workers, the Indigenous Social Work Committee, and Blue Quills University are holding a series of talking circles around the province to discuss ways to reduce that number. APTN's Chris Stewart was at their first session at the Edmonton Friendship Centre.
We have to heal the adults in the communities, in the homes, so our children will be less vulnerable. We don't have to live in fear of our children being snatched away from us anymore.
This group of social workers, teachers, grandmothers, and just plain people are talking about reducing the number of Indigenous children in provincial care. 10,000 Indigenous children, according to provincial statistics.
I should not have to be forced to remove a child from their mother without knowing that mother's story. Yet I was put in a position where I had to, and that's probably why I'm no longer in that position, because I couldn't do it. It went against my own belief system.
Mary McDermott is a social worker and a researcher for First Nation-run Blue Quills University.
We have more kids in care now than we did during the 60s scoop, than we did during the residential school era, and those numbers need to stop.
That's what these sessions are intended to do. Listen to Indigenous professionals and families on the front lines and put in a list of guidelines for mainstream Alberta social workers to follow. Maxine Solopre is with the Indigenous Social Worker Committee.
These guidelines are necessary because the social work practice here in Alberta is based on Western perspectives. There is no Indigenous perspectives at all.
Salapri says that non-Indigenous social workers need to be taught how Indigenous communities have different perspectives.
Indigenous people have their own answers. They have their own ways of living and their own ways of raising families, and to draw from those experiences, to draw from Indigenous people, to develop a practice framework that's going to help them maintain their families at home and so they don't go into care.
The next sessions will be held in High Prairie, Lethbridge, and St. Paul later this month. The guidelines these talking circles come up with will be sent to the Alberta College of Social Workers with the view to having them included in their education programs. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A traditional birch bark canoe builder is rowing history into the future. The canoe is traveling Prince Edward Island to reach out to communities. Angel Moore caught up with the canoe in Lennox Island on PEI.
Todd Labrador is keeping up a family tradition of building birch bark canoes. It's a tradition that didn't get lost because of residential schools. The reason? His great-grandfather would hide the children in the woods.
Now, how great-grandfather avoided jail, I don't know, because you didn't send your kids to residential school, you got sent to jail. But my father was able to keep the stories, the old stories.
Labrador is sharing those old stories by building a traditional canoe with local elders and community members. It is part of a project with Parks Canada and the Mi'kmaq Confederacy of PEI to bring alive Mi'kmaq history.
Our ancestors were very, very intelligent people. They knew the woods, they knew the waters, they knew everything about where they lived.
It is more than building a canoe. It is also about connecting to the community. Junior Peter Paul says it's an honor learning how his ancestors lived and passes that on to future generations.
Kids won't forget the teachings you give up the history of our Mi'kmaq people. They'll always keep it, they'll always remember it, and they'll always teach it.
Children from the Lennox Island Elementary School stopped by for a look at the canoe and traditional teachings.
Hard, because they had to row with their hands. Canoes are really good for using canoeing and fishing. I like how they use birch bark, and it's good.
All this was sewn with spruce roots.
Labrador says birch bark canoes have not been in some communities for over 100 years. He's changing that and plans to bring more canoes to more communities.
So the kids in the communities can see this. You know, it's valuable for me, for the Mi'kmaq youth and elders. It's valuable for our nation, but our province and our country.
The next stop for the canoe will be Scotchford, followed by Fort Amherst. The official launch will be next spring. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Lennox Island.
Students from Montreal Lake Cree Nation in northern Saskatchewan are on the work site this week, building community and building for the community. Our Amber Bernard reports.
While it doesn't look like a greenhouse yet, these students from Senator Allen Bird Memorial School are putting in the hours to have this eco-friendly greenhouse ready to use in just a few weeks. They're taking part in a class called Greenhouse Project 101. It's still new, but educators are pleased with the results so far.
Well, I'm impressed at the attendance rate. Like, even when we've had days where school is closed, the kids just show up, and they're there. They're the first ones there. When they had to take their training, I waited with them one day doing their tests, their first aid training and safety test. They were there till 6 o'clock at night. And when you see the diligence and the desire, it's just exciting as a vice principal and as a former teacher to see kids so wanting to learn.
And students say being on the job site is worthwhile.
I like getting my hands dirty, actually. I don't like sitting behind a desk and doing work. I don't think that's for me. I'd rather just be out there working physically and mentally, and yeah, I really enjoy it.
The greenhouse will be used as a place to learn during the school year, but will also benefit a community treatment center nearby.
The youth through the school will help plant, but also the clients here will help maintain it. So their weeding and whatever else has to be done will be done by your clients as well. So it's kind of a overall community event.
The high school partnered with Your Choice Homes and Focus Forward to help coordinate and fund the hands-on project.
What we pride ourselves in doing is turning blueprints into curriculums and job sites into classrooms.
Students say they're more than happy to work on-site every day until completion.
I love the program. It's a lot of fun. It's exciting.
The school hopes to have similar class projects ready for future students. Amber Bernard, APTN National News, Montreal Lake, Cree Nation.
Looks like a great program. We've got to step aside for another quick break, and then we'll get a look at a new movie that looks at Indigenous children in the United States who were taken away from their families and placed in non-Indigenous homes. Here's a look at the rest of your Friday forecast. Rain and snow mixed for Peace River and High Level with a high of 0. Plus 12 under the sun for Lethbridge, 10 and rain in Medicine Hat. On the west coast, 16 under sunny skies for Victoria and Penticton. Rain and 14 in Bella Coola. 5 above in Dease Lake and Fort Nelson. Sunny and 11 for Smithers. In the Yukon, 3 above for Dawson. 6 under sunny skies for Beaver Creek and Whitehorse. Plus 2 and sunny for Wrigley and Fort Simpson. Snow and 3 above for Norman Wells. A sunny -9 in Sax Harbor. 0 for Inuvik and Colville Lake. -6 in Pawlatuck. Plus 1 and snow for Arviet, Whale Cove and Chesterfield. -3 and snow for Baker Lake. -5 in Nagulick, 0 for Cape Dorset. Welcome back. Water, it's a basic human right? Well, not for Pikangikum First Nation or many other reserves across Canada. As Jamuna Gale Tamung finds out, a lack of clean drinking water has a profound effect on the health of Indigenous peoples living without it. She traveled to the center of the crisis and spoke to elders, youth, and leaders about why it's taking so long to resolve.
They have everything well out there. While in the isolated reserve, you don't have much. Like the food out there is less expensive, while food here is like so expensive. Yeah, and it's just how they have everything out there, and while we here don't have much stuff to go on.
Is there any running water to the house?
It was, but the pipe freeze when the break, not working anymore. No running water.
If a community, a family, a child doesn't have clean drinking water, as well as to wash in, then obviously the morale of that community is going to be greatly damaged. And this is what we see time and time again, is because there's lack of clean water, it really affects the community's ability to move forward.
What we're seeing with healthcare issues is I really see that this is really an injustice issue that we're just seeing through a healthcare lens.
Pikangikum's boil water advisory ended in September of this year. You can watch the whole episode of Colonial Tea tomorrow right after APTN National News. Dawnland is a film that tells the story about Indigenous children in the United States who were taken away from their families and put into residential school. Many of them were adopted out to non-Indigenous families. The film recently screened at the Vancouver International Film Festival. And as APTN's Tina House reports, the film was eerily similar to what happened to Indigenous children in Canada.
Okay. I was 2.5 when I was taken from my mother. I was taken away.
I got taken away
All of my brothers and sisters were taken from her.
I counted 26.
Dawn Land tells the story of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was appointed to take statements from residential school survivors in the state of Maine.
The state had taken my children and put them in foster care, and they separated them and put each one with a white family.
Between 5 and 18 years old, it's been group home, foster parent, hospital.
And just like in Canada, Indigenous children suffered the same atrocities in the U.S. Starting in the 1870s, thousands of kids were taken away.
It was seen as very progressive and had a lot of support, and that filtered its way into the child welfare system. You know, Native children are better off raised in white homes. You know, let's save those poor Indian kids.
Rachel George was the research coordinator for the TRC in Maine. She's in Vancouver along with Ben Pender-Cudlip, who co-directed the film.
When we heard about this commission, we saw that it was an opportunity to teach in the United States about a genocide that had occurred in the United States.
I don't know why I'm weepy over it. You know, how long, it was over 50 years ago. 55 years ago. And I never, it's just something I put behind me.
For Rachel George, she says that she traveled extensively across the state to get the statements, and that it was a very profound experience for her.
I was the one who sat and listened, bared witness to a number of Wabanaki, Penobscot, Micmac, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy individuals who were sharing their experiences about their time being removed from their communities, and it's really painful to hear about the disconnect, because it's something that's so prevalent, and it's an aspect that it's a source of pain that many people continue to have to work through.
Dawnland continues to screen at film festivals across North America. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
They're forbidden to speak.
Some really incredible work out there on this year's film festival circuit. That's your APTN National News for this Thursday. For more, including much more reaction to today's Supreme Court ruling on duty to consult, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Now stick around. Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand is coming up next. I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.